Okay, welcome guys to the live stream. This is actually the first episode of the fashion live show because a lot of people are asking me about that. So to let you guys know what the fashion live show is, I'm planning to start doing live streams every Saturday at 5 p.m. UK time, and the whole point of it is essentially to have like a fashion news segment on my channel where we essentially just talk about all the big news stories. So of course, this week the big news story is the controversy with Balenciaga. And today what we're going to do is we're going to do it in three parts. So I'm going to speak about the facts of what happened. Then I'm going to talk about like what my opinion is, and then I'm going to invite some people to like share their opinions as well. So it's not just me talking, and so it's not just my opinion. So I'll wait a little bit, and then after that we'll get straight into the facts, because I've seen a lot of coverage of the Balenciaga thing, but a lot of the coverage is very, very uncredible. Like the sources are so not credible. I don't know why people are taking a lot of the people talking about it seriously. Like a lot of these people are people that jump to conclusions really quickly. It was very much a lot of conspiracy theories. And then on top of that, they don't have any context to like what Balenciaga is, what Balenciaga stands for, what Balenciaga has done in the past, what Balenciaga does now. So yeah, a lot of the coverage has been a bit odd. So it's good for me to sort of come into the conversation as someone that's a fashion journalist and works in fashion and studies fashion, knows about the context of Balenciaga for years and years and years, because yeah, a lot of the coverage I've seen on the situation has been really, really crazy actually. Yeah, really, really blown overboard. Love from the Chocolate City. Okay, so we're gonna start talking about it essentially. And like I said, we're really only going to talk about the actual facts. So I'm reporting as an actual reporter, and then I'll give my opinion after. But I want to start, just talking about what the facts are. I don't think it's useful starting with all these strange conspiracy theories and, the weird stuff that people are saying, essentially. Okay, so to get straight into the facts, I'm sure you guys can see the image on the screen. So getting straight into the facts. Essentially, how this whole thing started was Balenciaga had two campaigns. So for their Spring Summer 23 campaign shoot, they had a campaign that was called Balenciaga Gift Shop. And Balenciaga Gift Shop was actually a campaign that was published on the 16th of November. So it features kids holding teddy bears that have straps fastened around the teddy bears. That sort of looks like this BDSM aesthetic. But remember that these teddy bears were featured in Balenciaga's Spring Summer 23 runway show, which I'll put on the screen at some point during this live stream, so you guys will be able to see. So that was one campaign. That was essentially a campaign promoting essentially toys, which is why, and like Christmas gifts, which is why they had the idea to put kids in it, because they're like seen as like toys, right? And then there was a second campaign, and why it's very important to mention that there were two different campaigns is a lot of the coverage online, people are acting as if someone wants me to zoom into the picture, so I'll zoom in. But people are acting as if it was just one, when it was actually more than one campaign. They're like two separate campaigns entirely. So the second campaign was for the collaboration between Balenciaga and Adidas. So that was called the Guardrobe Advertising Campaign. That actually got published after. So the first campaign was published on the 16th, the one you're looking at the screen. That was on the 16th of November. The second one was released on the 21st of November. And with that one, which I'm going to also put on the screen, what essentially happened was there was a document that was seen in the campaign essentially, which we'll get into, but that was a massive part of the controversy. I'm just going to put it on the screen so everyone can see exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the image in question, and that is the zoomed in document essentially. So first, I'm going to talk about sort of what this document was and why it was so controversial and why there was a lot of outrage. So to start with the campaign and the document. So what the document actually is, and what the image is it's a $3,000 Balenciaga Adidas hourglass bag. And of course, you can see it on the desk. And there are some printed copies of a document on the desk. And what this document actually is there was a court case in 2008. And the court case is called US versus Williams. And the case actually was examining laws around sort of child, I'll say prawn, because I don't want to say like the P word. So laws around child prawn and basically trying to figure out if it was promoting this and if what was done at the time was, you know, against the First Amendment freedom of right speech sort of laws. So that was a very big area of contention, actually. Yeah, someone is saying also the name in the picture frame. Yeah, I'll get to that. So there were also in this campaign, there were some other things. So there was a book that was called The Cremaster Cycle by Matthew Barney. And there was some artwork that was exhibited in the background in this campaign. And it was by a Belgian painter called Michael Bormans, I think is how you pronounce it. And it was basically one of his works called As Sweet as It Gets. And why this was really controversial is because people saw it as, you know, toddlers were showcased as engaging in very sinister things. And it sort of goes into the theme with the fact that in the same campaign, you have a court case, which is talking about, you know, child prawn, basically. And then a separate campaign also where kids are holding teddy bears that have BDSM. So, following on from this, Balenciaga issued an apology. They issued actually a series of apologies. So I'll put those on the screen now and I'll actually read them. So let me just get those. And the way they issued the apologies, it was as if they were addressing each thing separately. So the first one, I have it on the screen now. So this was what they said. They said, "We apologize for displaying unsettling documents in our campaign. We take this matter very seriously and are taking legal action against the parties responsible for creating the sets and including unapproved items for our Spring 23 campaign photo shoot. We strongly condemn abuse of children in any form. We stand for children's safety and well-being." So that was the first statement. Then to read the second one, just going to have it on the screen for you guys. But what I'm doing now, I'm just reporting the facts. I'm not going to give my opinion yet. I'll do that after. So this was another statement that they made. So they said, "We sincerely apologize for any offense our holiday campaign may have caused. Our plush bear bag should have not been featured with children in this campaign. We have immediately removed the campaign from all platforms." So those were the statements they made immediately that the backlash came from, you know, these things. And someone is saying they thought the Adidas campaign was published on the 3rd of... So there's a difference between the campaign in terms of like the video. So if you go on Balenciaga's video YouTube channel, there's an Adidas campaign and there are some other ones, versus the actual like images when they published it officially on their site. So then after that, Balenciaga, of course, had a few statements. The day after they issued these in the initial apology and statements, which was on the 24th of November. So on the 25th, they actually issued a lawsuit. And there's a really good source for this, the Fashion Law, which is sort of like a page where they talk a lot about law issues that go on within the fashion industry. And so I'll just put that on the screen for you guys, but definitely, I won't read through it. I'll just tell you kind of what happened, but definitely check out their website because it's a very, very credible source. So basically, what this lawsuit was Balenciaga filed papers in New York initiating a $25 million lawsuit against the production company. And this production company is called North Six, and also the set designer, whose name is Nicholas Desjardins, I think. But essentially, he designed the set for the Garderobe campaign. North Six have actually produced a lot of Balenciaga campaigns in the past. They've worked with Balenciaga for a very long time. They work with a lot of fashion brands. I know they've worked with Dior, for example. So of course, Balenciaga filed this lawsuit, and they were essentially claiming that the documents were placed in the campaigns without the knowledge of the brand. And this had basically led to false accusations of Balenciaga promoting child prom. That was what Balenciaga was claiming. After that, we saw some more and some further statements. And so the first statement that we saw was the photographer involved. So I'm going to bring that on the screen and sort of read out his statement, because I know the photographer got a lot of hate. So the photographer, whose name is Gabriele Galimberti, essentially said, following the hundreds of hate mails and messages I received as a result of the photos I took for the Balenciaga campaign, I feel compelled to make this statement. I'm not in a position to comment on Balenciaga's choices, but I must stress that I was not entitled in whatsoever manner to neither choose the products, nor the models, nor the combination of the same. As a photographer, I was only and solely requested to lit the given scene and take the shots according to my signature style. As usual for a commercial shooting, the direction of the campaign and the choice of the objects displayed are not in the hands of the photographer. I suspect that any person prone to pedophilia searches on the web and has unfortunately too easy access to images completely different than mine, absolutely explicit in their awful content. Accusations like these are addressed against wrong targets and distract from the real problem and criminals. Also, I have no connection with the photo where a Supreme Court document appears, which makes a lot of sense because they're two separate campaigns, which a lot of people didn't also realize. And to end his statement, he said that one was taken in another set by other people and was falsely associated with my photos. Now, to talk further about, because but I'm not going to talk about my opinion once again, but we'll talk about that later. But actually, when you look at the photographer's work, the photographer was actually working on a series of photos, and this series was called Toy Stories. And essentially what this photography series was documenting kids holding toys in different countries and sort of documenting the journey of the way that different children interact with toys in different regions. So that was the project that the photographer was working on. And that's also why Balenciaga tapped this photographer for this campaign, because obviously they wanted to sort of have a campaign around these teddy bears and these toys and promoting it for sort of like a Christmas gift that you can buy for a family member or a young kid that you have, right? So the photographer, as you can see, clearly had nothing to do with the set design. So please refrain from sending a lot of hate to the photographer, because the photographer didn't. The photographer isn't the reason why the props were on the set. The photographer is not the set designer. So that's something that I really want to mention. And then following further from this, we saw statements from Balenciaga's CEO, and we also saw a statement from Demna, who, as a lot of people know, is the creative director of Balenciaga. So we're going to start by reading Demna's statement first. So what Demna said was, I want to personally apologize for the wrong artistic choice of the concept for the gifting campaign with the kids, and I take my responsibility. It was inappropriate to have kids promote objects that had nothing to do with them. As much as I would sometimes like to provoke a thought through my work, I would never have an intention to do that with such an awful subject as child abuse, and I condemn, period. I guess he was supposed to say, I condemn this. but I need to learn from this. Listen and engage with child protection organizations to know how I can contribute and help on this terrible subject. I apologize to anyone offended by the visuals, and Balenciaga has guaranteed that adequate measures will be taken not only to avoid similar mistakes in the future, but also to take accountability in protecting child welfare in every way we can. Sincerely, Demna. So that was one of the statements. And then, of course, there was a statement from, well, there are multiple statements from Balenciaga, actually, which I will read after this. And then I'll get into sort of because really what I'm talking about right now is just what happened. And then I'll get into my opinion and sort of provide even more context as to what has happened. So Balenciaga actually had two statements. I'll read the first one, if I can pause this. Okay, so they said, "We would like to address the controversy surrounding our recent ad campaigns. We strongly condemn child abuse. It was never our intent to include it in our narrative. The two separate ad campaigns in question reflect a series of grievous errors for which Balenciaga takes responsibility. The first campaign, the gift collection campaign, featured children with plush bear bags dressed in what some have labeled BDSM-inspired outfits. Our plush bear bags and the gift collection should not have been featured with children. This was a wrong choice by Balenciaga. Combined with our failure in assessing and validating images, the responsibility for this lies with Balenciaga alone. The second, separate campaign for Spring 23, which is meant to replicate a business office environment, included a photo with a page in the background from a Supreme Court ruling, United States versus Williams, 2008, which confirms as illegal and not protected by freedom of speech the promotion of child's porn. All the items included in this shooting were provided by third parties that confirmed in writing that these props were fake office documents. They turned out to be real legal papers, most likely coming from the filming of a television drama. The inclusion of these unapproved documents was the result of reckless negligence, for which Balenciaga has filed a complaint. We take full accountability for our lack of oversight and control of documents in the background, and we could have done things differently. While internal and external investigations are ongoing, we are taking the following actions. We are closely revising our organization and collective ways of working. We are reinforcing the structures around our creative processes and validation steps. We want to ensure that new controls mark a pivot and will prevent this from happening again. We are laying the groundwork with organizations who specialize in child protection and aims at ending child abuse and exploitation. We want to learn from our mistakes and identify ways we can contribute. Balenciaga reiterates its sincere apologies for the offense we have caused and extends its apologies to talent and partners." So that was the first statement. And then the second statement was quite interesting because they actually mentioned that they were dropping the lawsuit, which they initially basically had against the set designer. So let me read it out. It says, "Balenciaga takes the following actions with the objective to learn from our mistakes as an organization." So the first thing they said was new control instances. Our current process for content validation has failed, and we recognize we need to do better. On the internal side, we nominate with immediate effect an image board responsible for evaluating the nature of our content from concept to final assets, including legal, sustainability, and diversity expertise. I know I wasn't going to mention my opinion at this point, but that is that's so insane that a massive company like Balenciaga didn't even have stuff like that in place in the first place. That is absolutely shambolic and just despicable, basically. That's actually quite hilarious and laughable that a massive company like Balenciaga didn't have that in place. But anyway, we move on. On the external side, we have appointed a best-in-class agency to assess and evaluate our content. Once again, absolutely shocking that Balenciaga didn't have something like that in place. I don't know who the hell was responsible for having stuff like that in place. They really shouldn't have a job. So they also said organization. We have reorganized our image department to ensure full alignment with our corporate guidelines. Lawsuit. Balenciaga has decided not to pursue litigation. Learn and contribute. We want to learn, help, and contribute to protect children. We are starting trainings on responsible communication across our teams. Together with my team, we will go on listening tours to engage with advocacy groups who aim to protect children. Donation, we have set aside a significant fund for grants to organizations so that we can help make a difference in protecting children. I want to personally reiterate my sincere apologies for the offense caused and take my responsibility. At Balenciaga, we stand together for children's safety and do not tolerate any kind of violence and hatred message. Cedric Charbit, President and CEO. So that was a statement from the President and CEO of Balenciaga. So that's just me reporting. That's just me saying, essentially, from a very, very objective point of view, what happened, and just essentially reporting the facts of what happened. So right now, I'm going to put the runway show, the last runway show, so Spring Summer 23 on the screen while I talk through what my opinion on all of this actually is. Because I have quite a lot of thoughts on all of it. The first thing is that the fact that they only just put in place something where people are sort of evaluating and cross-checking all the documents and props in each campaign is so shocking that a massive company like I'm just like, how the hell does a massive company like Balenciaga not have stuff like that in place? That is so that is like that. I'm not even being like I'm not exaggerating. Like whoever is responsible for campaigns at Balenciaga should not have a job. That is something that should have been in place for a company like Balenciaga from the start, from day one. That is so insane. They don't have something like that in place. So that's the first thing that when I read it, I was just like, there's absolutely no way they don't have something like that in place. Like, how the hell do they not have something like that in place? That's just wow. In terms of, the accusations of BDSM, what I will say is that, so as you can see on the screen right now, that's one of the teddy bears that was featured in the campaign. So this was something that was in the Spring Summer 23 collection, which a lot of people, which a lot of people were acting as if that was the first time they were seeing it. Balenciaga has had this sort of BDSM, Hellraiser, post-apocalyptic aesthetic for years. Demna Gvasalia has had that aesthetic at Balenciaga for a while. So it's not something new. It's not something out of the ordinary for Balenciaga. So that's the first thing that, when I first saw the campaign, I didn't think, they're promoting child sexuality. I genuinely thought, oh, those are the toys from the Spring Summer 23 collection. They're trying to promote this as something that people should buy for families. That being said, though, I can see where people are coming from in terms of it looks inappropriate, but going as far as to saying they're promoting child porn, I think that was a bit of an overstep. I think that was just going a bit too far. In terms of the photographer, once again, I don't think the photographer had anything to do with it. When it comes to, because I've been on a lot of these high budget shoots, when it comes to high budget shoots, there are so many people involved. There's a separate set designer who actually designs the set. There are creative directors that also work with the photographers on how it's going to look. Of course, the actual creative director of the brand has creative control on what the initial idea is. So there's so many people involved, and on shoots like that, the photographer's job really is just to take the picture. They're not designing the set. So I really think the hate that the photographer has gotten is really, really unwarranted. I don't think that the photographer should have gotten all the hate that, the photographer got. I just think it was just a bit of an overstep. Because I don't think the photographer had anything to do with the things that a lot of people are putting into question. So yeah, to me, that stuff was just crazy. What also stood out to me was there was a clear lack of accountability on Balenciaga's side. And as someone that works in fashion, I understand why a lot of people in fashion aren't covering this or aren't saying what I'm about to say. Because of course, when you work in fashion, Balenciaga is a big brand. People want to work with Balenciaga. They don't want to cut ties with these big brands. Which is kind of sad that a lot of people in fashion don't speak their mind because they're so scared of well, I just want to work with, you know, this brand or whatever. But so everything that Balenciaga did was basically just a lack of accountability. Like when you're a massive brand like Balenciaga, like I was saying earlier, you should have things put in place to ensure that, yes, we found out that, you know, the props were actually provided by a lawyer that the set designer worked with, and they were, you know, going through the shoot under the belief that these were just random props. But to not even read it, you have to take responsibility for that. You can't blame the set designer. You can't blame, you know, other people involved in the suit. You can't blame the production company, because ultimately that's like, don't people know how the corporate world works? Like when you're in a senior role, when you're in a high position, everything falls with you. Whatever the outcome is, it always goes, the person who's responsible is the person at the top, because they are responsible for who they hire, they're responsible for who they work with, they're responsible to put people in place to make sure that these documents and the sets are actually vetted. So everything ultimately still falls under Balenciaga's fault, because ultimately it happened under your watch. So even if, okay, yes, you didn't provide the documents, yes, that was external, but it was still under your watch. So you just have to, you know, you have to take responsibility for that. And the fact that they issued this lawsuit against the set designer, to me, it just looked like they were trying to shift blame. It looked like they weren't trying to take accountability. And that's why very quickly we've seen that they withdrew basically the lawsuit, because they weren't going to win. Of course they weren't going to win, because when you look at the facts of the sets and people working on the set, during the shoot, people would have been going through these papers, because I've been to shoots like this. Like, there's so many people that are involved on this set. There would have been makeup artists, there would have been photographers, there would have been the set designer. So there would have been so many people at this shoot who could have potentially read the documents or seen the documents. And so the fact that they tried to like have this lawsuit and just, you know, shift blame and be like, oh, it's their fault, to me is absolutely shocking. And I think why I think it's good that I'm talking about this is because that my issue with fashion is so many people just don't like to take accountability. It annoys me so much. It just reminds me of when I've been in certain jobs and like my boss has told me to do something, like they've told me to do something very specific and I've done that. And then the CEO of the company is like, why was this done? And then they try to blame me. And I'm like, you told me to do something. I'm your employee. I just did what you told me to do. It's your fault if something goes wrong because you told me what to do. Like, because if I go against what you tell me to do, now I'm a bad employee and I might get fired. So when you're in a position of power, when you're in a high position, the reason why you get paid more, why you earn millions, is because you're supposed to take responsibility when things like this happen, because you're responsible for hiring everyone down the chain. So the lack of accountability to me was just so annoying. Like it made me so annoyed. And it was just like, this is what I hate about fashion. Like people just don't like to take responsibility at all. But to address something that I saw that was a big misinformation, and this was going back to a lot of the conspiracy theories I was seeing online, was essentially a lot of people were saying that Balenciaga models are like, they look like they've been trafficked and all this sort of stuff. And I thought that was a bit of a reach, because like people were saying that essentially on this runway show, the models looked like they had been beaten up, but actually that was just makeup and it was deliberately done because the aesthetic of the Spring Summer 23 runway show was a reference to the war and a post-apocalyptic time, which is why the set of the runway show looks like just a decimated landscape. So that was just a complete reach, but I can understand because a lot of the people that were covering it were people that like aren't involved in fashion, so they don't know that Balenciaga like do stuff like this, or like Demna is inspired by things like that. So yeah, that is just, yeah, it's just crazy, to be honest. It's just insane that the lack of accountability and just like the shifting of the blame. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open the floor. I'm going to like invite some people, like some of my friends, to like speak about their opinions on it. and I'm gonna respond to a few comments because I haven't been following the comments so far. Said the models do look like victims of human trafficking. I mean, they look like that, but it doesn't mean they are, because that's the aesthetic. Like everyone that has followed Balenciaga knows that that's just the aesthetic of, like, it's intended, like, for them to look that, like, they're supposed to look like they just went through a war. Like they're supposed to look like they went through hardship. That's like the artistic vision of the runway show. Someone literally said that Balenciaga means bow, the demon is king. Yeah, but that's just, to be fair, that's, once again, as a fashion journalist, I'm just going to stick to like what the information we have, not like weird conspiracy theories, because that doesn't really add anything meaningful to the conversation. Someone said the photographer did a photo shoot about rednecks owning guns. I think that is why he got targeted by the right-wing media, and the hate came from that. Yeah, I understand that, but also it came from the fact that, you know, just the image that he shot, essentially. I'm just reading through the comments. Huge lack of accountability, which is why I'm glad to hear that they dropped the lawsuit. There's no way those images didn't go through major lines in the chain of command. Yeah, I think, well, from their claims, they said that they didn't check, and now they put people in place. But still, I just think that, to me, it's just so insane that no one checked that. Like, there's no way everyone on that shoot, they were just like shooting and no one looked at the documents. That to me is insane at a company like Balenciaga. Like, that is like, yeah, that's insane. Jack, you're ready on it's daytime here, totally watching the replay later and commenting like it's live. Yeah, definitely watch it back. This live stream will be it will be on, like, I'll leave it after so you can watch it back. This isn't an aesthetic, bro. It's just plain weird and in bad taste. I mean, that's just your personal opinion. An aesthetic is an aesthetic. It's now your personal opinion to say whether you like it or if you think it's in bad taste or not. But an aesthetic is an aesthetic, though. Is it my personal cup of tea? No. Have I bought any Balenciaga in my whole life? No, because I just don't really like. I personally don't like the aesthetic, but it doesn't mean it's inherently bad. I just think it comes down to your personal opinion. Would be nice if people are actually blowing the kids' faces when reporting on it. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to put the kids' faces on the screen anymore. But however, whether you blur the kid's face or not, their faces are already like everywhere. I don't think it like. I don't know. I'm not putting the kids under any sort of extra, like, what's the word? Under any sort of extra scrutiny or whatever. But that's a good point to bring up. I'm not going to put them on the screen again. Malcolm, I'll send you the link via Instagram because I can't post the link in the chat because I don't want like some crazy people to like join in. So I'll send it to you on Instagram. Also, if you guys want to learn some really good things about like the facts of the whole situation, but more in depth, because obviously I did sort of summarize it, then definitely check out the article via the New York Times. A very credible source, and they covered all the like really important points. I'll post the link to that in the chat, and also I'll post the link just in the video description. The children with the toys was just plain inappropriate, very dumb choice. But I don't understand what happened with the document. Who, why? Yeah, that to me is just like it almost makes me feel like why would that ever be in a sort of prop set for documents to have on set? Why would something that serious be in, like, why? Just like, what? Like, I just don't get it. It's just like, why would that even be in there? Like, why the hell would that be in there? It's so weird. It's so strange. Do you reckon it's okay to wear Balenciaga still? Would you wear Balenciaga after this if you love the clothes, or do you think people who wear it might get harassed? Well, I don't wear Balenciaga to start with. Yeah, I like Demna's Balenciaga. I've always followed it for the ideas behind it. I think the way he thinks is quite interesting, and I've always followed what Balenciaga has done. But to wear it personally, I would never wear it. So it's not really an issue I have to like think about. However, I do think that people that wear the Balenciaga might get harassed, if I'm being like objective, because we have seen people like vandalizing Balenciaga stores, and people have been saying online that basically if you wear Balenciaga, you're promoting child prawn, which once again, I think that's a bit of a reach, but that's just the reality of what people are thinking right now. So, I think people just wear what you want to wear, but you just have to also be aware of what like the general viewpoint on certain issues is. I think Balenciaga already had a bit of a trend-based, not real fashion feeling with the surface fashion community. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I can see what you're saying. The thing about Balenciaga, but once again, I'm not really trying to go into conspiracy theories because it's not what I'm trying to achieve today. But a lot of what Demna does and a lot of what Balenciaga does is actually very, very, very deliberate. Like, if you think of Balenciaga over the years, their whole marketing strategy is like outrage marketing. It's promoting things that are outrageous. It's selling tattered sneakers for $400. It's making a t-shirt shirt that everyone's like, what the hell is this? It's making Crocs that are hundreds of dollars. It's, making a 7-layer Parker jacket. That is what Balenciaga does. And so it's a lot of what Balenciaga does is very, very, very deliberate. And so, it's just it's a bit crazy when you think about it. But let me add Dami. Let's see what his thoughts are. Hello,
Hey,
hello.
hello. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, all good.
All right, calm.
What are your
Um,
thoughts on what's been going on?
Give me a second. I just want to separate the YouTube from the stream thing in it. Just want to see the comments properly. But literally give my thoughts. Quite interesting, and it's not really like this is obviously a massive big
Hmm.
like terrible thing that's happened, right? Like and apologies for smoking, but like when something is so egregious, it's yeah, the my automatic response is not necessarily to smile, but it's like it's so bad that I can't like it's one of those things like when like I think well anyways, let me not get into the historics of why black people smile when something bad happens, but yeah, no, but it's not really like the best situation for Balenciaga. They actually had something terrible happen within their corporate identity, and I generally think it will be hard to get over considering the the nature of the incident,
Hmm.
knowing that their audience is weirdly quite older, or should I say, the people with money that are their audience is older,
Hmm.
and it changes their perception, especially considering there is a large parent base and people just don't mess with even the idea of someone playing with child anything, right? Even with all of the people who are trying, like, because there is a large swath of people that are trying to make it part of the LGBTQIA identity, saying it's just a normal sexuality and all of these other things. And then there is the other side of well, the Christian side, I should say, or should I say the religious side, where people are identifying this as trying to reprogram our kids and reprogram us to find this thing okay, and trying to think that people are trying to reprogram them and actually sending terrible messages to each other. And all of that is coming into the swirl as well. And even with what I've been seeing in terms of what comments you've been responding to as well, like there's a lot of people that have been saying that the models are weird, right? But no one has really said that about the models in quotes, like in this term before, like saying people look like they're being trafficked. I know you didn't mean it, but like you were like, yeah, you said yeah they look like that, but it's, yeah, I know you didn't mean it like that, but it's not, yeah they look like that. Like models in Paris are generally known to be skinny. Like these Parisian houses use models that look like that all the time. And we're not saying,
Sorry to cut you off. Like, I just wanted to show an example on the screen of what I'm talking about, just so like people
yeah,
know where like this sort of stuff is coming from. So like, this was something I saw on Twitter, for example. Someone said, "You want to see how deep and dark Balenciaga's abuse of kids goes." So they're saying research Rachel Chandler. She is a model agent, provides a lot of models for brand. All models in her agency look like trafficking victims. She was on Epstein Island. She even posted a CCTV pic from the island. It's one of the crazy, conspiracy theories. And then one of the models who was featured in the picture basically came out and said, "This is me in the bottom photo, and I can assure you I'm not a victim." So
yes,
like, it's like stuff like that, for example.
skinny models aren't Balenciaga aesthetic. They're like almost an industry standard, right? So like it, as much as given light of the recent situation, people wasn't saying this prior. I think I froze.
Yeah, you do freeze,
But
but that's
yeah,
fine.
like
You're back.
people wasn't saying this like 2 years ago, like years ago. So, but I do find these things interesting, right? So
Well,
it's a
I
different
think that
situation,
the
and
reason why,
obviously it's
if you think about it, sorry, the reason why people are talking about it now versus they weren't talking about it before is because this story has gone past the fashion world. Like, people in fashion know that Balenciaga's had this aesthetic for years, but because obviously it's picked up by like Tucker Carlson, Fox News, now the audience of people that are looking into the story are people that have no context to what Balenciaga does or what they've done in the past or what the aesthetic is, what even the ideas behind why certain things look a certain way are. So that's why they're going to start looking at every single thing and being like, "Oh, there's this, there's that," when it's like always been like that.
yeah, like I understand that, like I really do understand it, and this is a deplorable thing that needs to be like really stricken down now so that there isn't anything like this following. But yeah, like there are stretches being made based upon this where it's like, yo, like you look at the general aesthetic, like no one's saying that about the LV models or the Chanel models or anything like that, then you should be able to say this for the large swath of people, not just Balenciaga. And this isn't even me posting Balenciaga bail, because I think this is terrible and this needs to be shut down here. But there is something that was done wrong, and within the bounds of everything it is wrong, right? But then there's the other things where it's like we're talking about models that look healthy. That is where that conversation goes. It doesn't include, oh, these people look like they're human trafficked.
But I
I don't
don't
see
get it.
that same.
Like, okay, look at so this comment, for example, but their skinny models are way different in aesthetic than at other companies. They use beat and abuse vibe. That is so not true. Like, heroin chic was like a whole thing. Like, the Yves Saint Laurent like models that look like they were on drugs and stuff. Like, this has been a thing in fashion forever. Like, I don't, this whole thing that, oh, all of a sudden Balenciaga is like promoting this like new beta model. I said, like, a lot of models look not healthy. In fact, a lot of models aren't healthy.
Oh
Like, I
yeah,
remember
no,
when
that's
I
true.
first started working in fashion, I'll be on shoots and like models would literally faint because they haven't eaten, because they have to keep a certain waist size
Mm.
and they have to be size zeros. Like, this has been an issue with modeling forever. Like, this is a problem that people have always been talking about for years. This is not some like new thing that Balenciaga is promoting. This is a thing that has been in fashion since before I was born. Like, this is something that, like, I don't understand this whole, oh, it's only Balenciaga that's doing this aesthetic. No, it's not. Like, every brand in fashion has been doing this for years.
Like, I don't want to say it, but McQueen has this like is this lauded guy, and obviously like I enjoy McQueen as well, but he does have a collection or a show called Highland something called rather, and
Mm-hmm.
there are multiple, let's say, aesthetics of multiple runway shows from multiple brands using the beaten vibe and trafficked aesthetic or whatever you want to call it. But I remember before this, people were saying Balenciaga models look homeless. That was
Mm-hmm.
the cachet, or that was the thought process. They were like, oh, Balenciaga has this homeless aesthetic. Nobody was saying, oh, they have this trafficked aesthetic, which is a totally different like forum. And I get behind everything you said about models being unhealthy, and like I know models that have a diet of cheese and cigarettes, and yeah, like that's terrible, and like models should be healthier, and I am someone who promotes like plus size models as well. But away from that, it's like, yeah, like that traffic
Mm-hmm.
thing that people are saying, it's not really in the bounds of this conversation.
Uh-huh.
Like it stretches out the bounds, and we can have that our models need to be healthier conversation, and me and you both do, like we do talk about that, but
Mm-hmm.
but I think we both, I say, those people that collectively know this isn't that conversation we're having.
Yeah, I do agree with this. I think someone said, I think because Balenciaga is in the mud right now, people are trying to add on other stuff that's unrelated. I would definitely agree with that. I think there's an issue at hand, which is definitely bad. There's clearly an issue with those documents being in that shoot, like a big issue that we need to get straight to the bottom of. Like, why the hell was it in that pack?
Mm.
That's all I want to know. Why was it? Why is it that in a set in a pack of, you know, fake props for a shoot, why is there a real document, and not just any real document? It could have been anything. It could have been a lawsuit about some football thing, or some lawsuit about something. Why did it have to be something real and as serious as that? That is what I need to get down to the bottom of. That's like the main issue. Also, the issue with, you know, books being in the set, which I put on the screen earlier, or the artwork that was also in the set. Why are all these things so related and they're in the set of the shoot? And these are all meant to be like fake props. So that's really what the issue to me is. But adding the whole, oh, the models and this, and they look like they're trafficked or whatever. Like, models have always looked unhealthy and they're still unhealthy till today, which is why like there's a whole modeling movement now which is like trying to promote more healthy bodies, and, you know, people not starving themselves or being on drugs. Because I think someone mentioned earlier, yeah, a lot of models are on drugs. Like, a lot of models are struggling with like drug abuse and all different things. So yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. But this idea that Balenciaga is solely promoting this, when to me it's the whole of fashion that perpetuates it, I just think it's a bit of an overstep.
Yeah, yeah, there's a bunch of I'm trying to like get through the comments. Everyone's like, and obviously this coverage of this topic is like, well, we spoke about this earlier this week. Like I found it important, and the facts did need to be resolved, and like needed to be posted in a, you know, sequential manner and all of these
Right.
other things. But there is a bunch of things, like let's say the stylist, the photographer, like there's certain people apart from the set and prop and lawyer that was there, like the stylist isn't like responsible for like these papers, and they're
Yeah.
not like. then they're not responsible for a bunch of things, right? And the photographer is not responsible. Like he said, this is a commercial shoot. Like this is not his like in quotes vision. This is part of his thing that he's doing that has a different story aligned to it, and probably thought this has kids that I'm showing, and there's toys in this, so
Hmm.
it goes with that. So yeah, like less on the photographer and the stylist. Like this is more
Yeah.
of a I'm
Oh, you're
freezing
freezing
bears.
again.
Yeah, I'm freezing bears. Yeah, this is an oversight of Balenciaga. This is like there's certain people that aren't involved. Like if you're gonna go after the stylist and all that, you might as well go after the interns and everything. Like everybody at that
Yeah.
shoot. Like, and I don't know necessarily whether anyone needs to lose their job. Like out of those people, out of that lot of
Not,
people.
not when I say lose your job, I'm not talking about the stylist or the photographer. They were hired to do a job. I think the
Yeah,
people that should lose their jobs are people that are responsible for, like making sure these things are in place, like oversight, overseeing the whole
yeah,
thing. Those are the
yeah,
people that like shouldn't be in a job because, like, if you're at the top, you hire all these people. Everything falls with you.
yeah,
Like you're
definitely.
supposed to be responsible for everything that happens, not these separate entities. So like I was saying, the hate at the photographer to me is a bit unwarranted. Um, I think the main people that should be to blame are the people that are involved in hiring all these people and the people that for some reason didn't put in place these things like having agencies that will actually check the validity of like props in a set. Like how the hell can a massive company like Balenciaga under a massive conglomerate like Kering not have something like that in place? Like does that
Yeah.
even make sense to you?
No, there shouldn't be this like yeah, like there should
It
be like
doesn't
a
make
massive
sense.
team that are incentivized to avoid these things. There's people hired, especially at this level. It's like, and this goes to show like this is one
Oh, he's
shoot.
freeze. He's
Wait, am I
he's
frozen?
freezing again. He's a freezer. All right, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, this is one shoot at the end. It's probably the blurred black background, but this is one shoot at the end of the year that's going to affect sales. Um,
Oh my god, he's on a freezing mission. Come on, Dammy, come back to us.
so I'm here, but I'm not. Wait, give me a second.
You're like halfway
Give me a
here.
second.
Do you want to go and like sort some stuff out, and I'll
Yeah, no.
respond to some of the comments I'm seeing?
Wait.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, someone said, "Glad to see a fashion channel covering this. It's annoying that every video starts off about complaining about the prices and has no understanding of what Balenciaga does." Yeah, unfortunately, because a lot of the coverage hasn't come from the context of a fashion perspective to actually know with greater context what Demna's work at Balenciaga has been, what he's inspired by, what his inspiration points are, blah blah blah. Yeah, people have just been like reaching heavily. Me personally, as a journalist, like I can say an opinion, but I can't say it as fact. I can only say what the facts are, and then like saying that, oh, I think Balenciaga knew beforehand. I don't have any proof of that, so I can't say that definitively. So I'm not going to engage in that sort of like talking point. I can say that I think it's a bit strange that all those things, like a painting and a book and a like court case about children, like all of that all in one shoot is very dodgy. For all of that to all be in one shoot at once is just like, what the hell? But I don't know who was involved. I have no proof of that, so I can't say who I think is, because as a journalist, I have like a responsibility to not jump the gun the way like someone else would.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and that was like the brunt of our conversation as well, wasn't it? I'm way better now, aren't
Yeah,
I?
yeah, a lot better.
Yeah, that was the brunt of our conversation, is the fact that like there wasn't enough information, the story wasn't complete, and we needed to like see the thing in its entirety before like making a real statement about it and having a real opinion as well. It's like it's hard to have an opinion. Like you jumped the gun and did it on the first day, yeah, there would have been a lot of hype around it. However, there wouldn't have been a real story to talk about. It would have been mostly
Hmm.
speculation, and then you would have to then update consistently on what the story is as it progressed, instead of being
Right.
able to do a one shot. This is what it is, and here's where we are today. But yeah, my point before was like, this is a major oversight on the shoot at the end of the year, where like holiday sales generally go up, and it's gonna affect their bottom line, it's going to affect their sales, and someone is responsible for that, and someone generally has to pay for that. Like, that's not
Yeah.
a this is not a good thing for anyone.
So this comment, the set designer is responsible and only them. I don't agree. I
Mm,
agree that the set designer was responsible for like bringing in the props and they design the set essentially. So as a set designer, you're supposed to know everything that's on the set. So you definitely take a heavy part of the blame regardless. But I also think we're removing the blame from the Balenciaga team as a whole. Because the same way the set designer is responsible, I think the people that are supposed to oversee the whole thing also should have things in place to make sure that these things are vetted and checked properly. So I think it's both. I think it's people high up at Balenciaga plus the set designer. I don't
yeah,
think it's just the set designer personally.
yeah. Like, and honestly, like on the people that jump the gun and like say, "Oh, you never like I was here first," and all of this, like, this isn't about being first. This is about the right information and not being so let's say zealous
Hmm.
about going through this type of thing. It might be good in the eyes of like social justice people to be like in quotes first, but there is also a thing to be said about being right about the thing that you're putting out there and the content you're putting out there, because yeah, no, you don't want that. You don't want to be a first and wrong and the information changes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also it's just weird because to me like at the end of the day it's the aesthetic of Balenciaga. So like I saw a lot of stuff on like Twitter, especially on TikTok. I think a lot of people on TikTok were spreading severe misinformation, and I think a lot of them were doing it because obviously it's a big story. I get it. You're trying to get views, but like if you're going to do that, at least like report. Because like a lot of people didn't even know that these teddy bears, for example, were in this collection.
Mm.
They didn't know that it came from this collection, for example. Or I'll put another picture on the screen. I've just been doing some stuff in the background. So a lot of people don't know that. Let me just put this on the screen. That this is like Balenciaga's aesthetic. So like things like this is the type of stuff that Balenciaga sells. Like
Yeah.
people don't know that. So like it's not out of the ordinary aesthetically for Balenciaga to have, you know, a shoot with that aesthetic.
Yeah, can I also say it's not necessarily BDSM? It's like it may be derived, I guess. Like, you can probably say that, but those aren't BDSM teddy bears per se. And what do you think about people saying Demna needs to take blame for this as well?
Hmm. Um, the problem is I don't know to what extent like Demna has control over these things.
Mm,
Like I think it just depends. If Demna was in charge of hiring everyone, I think it falls on Demna to also have things in place as the creative director to make sure that these things are vetted.
mm,
But that's not only on him, that's also on the CEO, that's also on like the Balenciaga executive team. Like there should be people whose role is literally just like vetting these things. Obviously, they've done it now, but that's after the controversy. It's too late. Like every company normally has like it's weird because I've worked at other companies where they have stuff like this in place that are a lot smaller than Balenciaga. So when I see that Balenciaga doesn't have stuff like that in place, to me it's a bit crazy. But I understand why. Because in fashion is the type of industry where people try to like push the boundaries a lot and
mm.
then they pass it off as like, oh, I'm just being creative. And I feel like a lot of fashion people think they can get away with that a lot. Like they can just like push the boundary too far and then be like, oh, it's just like this is my inspiration. Like I'm being creative. And I think this is where a lot of designers get into trouble because they get into such a like bubble of like other fashion people that are like, bravo, amazing, your ideas, and they start they stop thinking about like the wider picture and okay, how can this be viewed like outside of fashion? And I think that's
Yeah,
where like we get into issues. And it's not like someone just said, it's not only Balenciaga. So that's why I said fashion. Like a lot of people do that in fashion, and that's why you need like external people that vet these things. Which is like what I was saying. I've worked at companies that are smaller than Balenciaga that have stuff like this in place. So to me, I'm like, how the hell is Balenciaga only putting this in place now? Like that to me
yeah,
makes no sense.
yeah. No, same. Like literally, and this is why like you hire an external firm as well. So like, not only that you relieve yourself of some blame, I guess. Like that's a good part. Good in quotes part of like hiring an external team, but it's like there is so much like, or should I say, there's a different creative director for certain things. So when you start talking commercially, maybe Demna knows what goes on the runway, but
Mhm.
in terms of something that can be good for all, obviously this was terrible for all, right? So this was this that person, if there's like commercial liability or whoever those people are, right? That person that's responsible for the commercial creative direction and marketing for Balenciaga, that person needs to take onus on this one
Oh yeah,
because,
of course.
yeah, like literally, it's hard to, and if that's them now, then so be it, right? Like that's them now. But there should be generally someone else that's like the marketing manager or campaign manager, because this is the holiday season and this has affected Balenciaga grievously. Like there's people that are never gonna buy Balenciaga, and there's a whole swath of people that probably could have been new customers that they won't have anymore because this is their first instance of hearing Balenciaga, and
Hmm.
that happens, and that's what makes this terrible. It's like you could have had a lot of people that liked Balenciaga, or yeah, could have liked Balenciaga, but because of this they won't even broach the subject because it just goes against so many of their principles,
Yeah.
and that's
To
that
me,
is what.
it's just like once again, the people at the top have to take responsibility. It's like whoever signs it off, whoever's responsible for the overseeing of it, has to take the
Yeah,
fall for it. That's just how it goes.
yeah,
That's why you're at the top. That's why you get paid the most. That's the whole point. There's a
Ceci,
lot of responsibility. If you want to be paid that much and you want to be a CEO and you want to be on top, but you don't want to take responsibility when your team does something like this, then you shouldn't be in that position. To be honest, you really shouldn't.
yeah.
Like, who's in charge of marketing? Who's in charge of hiring people that work on the campaigns? These are the people that should actually take the fall, not blaming a photographer, or blaming people that were literally hired to do a job.
HR, diversity and inclusion, cultural awareness. Who like Cersei is absolutely right. This was a major like administrative error, and the marketing team also, they made a massive error with this
Hmm.
because like even the editor should have been able to see this and even photoshop that out if they knew what to look for anyways. But there should have been people that were going back and forth, like I think everybody knows. I think this was one of the major points that I guess I found fair, is that this has to pass through so many hands, that for this to be the oversight is wild. Like that could have
Yeah.
ended up being a
Wait,
blank.
someone said he is the creative director. Duh. Well, it doesn't work like that because, like, if you work in fashion, every company, the way that corporate entities are structured is different. So at one brand, the creative director, even though it's the creative director role, they are literally only designing the clothes. They don't have any say in like the marketing campaigns. Um, like most creative directors actually don't. Funny enough, like that's why when Ras Simmons went to Calvin Klein, they specifically were talking about how he's also in charge of like the marketing of Calvin Klein and how it's going to be marketed,
Mhm.
because most creative directors actually don't have the onus on that. Like they can tell you like a creative vision, but in terms of like things getting signed off and stuff, it's out of their hands. So just saying he's the creative director, every single brand works differently and the corporate structure is different. So just because
Yeah.
someone is a creative director doesn't mean like from brand to brand they have the exact same role and responsibilities. Like it's very different. That's why I can't say for sure that Demna Vasalia is like responsible, because every brand works differently.
Yeah, some creative directors don't even have charge of accessories,
Literally.
merchandise. like what goes into stores. Like there's so many things that creative directors don't have control over, but making sure the show goes well is pretty much their job, right? It's
Hmm.
yeah, that's their job. Their job isn't to do marketing and administration and oversee everything. Obviously, there can be some creative directors that have full autonomy in that aspect and final say on everything. But that's a massive job to have, and that's you wearing multiple hats. So like just in like the career aspect, if you had control of all of those things, then you would be having to do like like 4 or 5 different jobs at once.
Hmm.
And your time shouldn't be used for that. It should be used for making collections, and rightly so. Like, and there are people, especially when you're growing a company, and I see this a lot, it's like, yo, I need to grow this company. However, I can't do the commercial shoots. So I'm
Yeah,
going
creative
to,
directors, they hate doing that stuff. Like, I've worked at different like types of brands. So I've worked at small brands where the creative director does everything, and they hate it because creative directors are normally designers and they just want to design. And they're like, why am I like handling marketing campaigns? And why am I like handling the press? And why am I like in contact with these celebrities that we're going to send like press shoots, clothes for press shoots? And why am I? And then they realize that they actually don't do any design because they're doing so many other things. So when
literally,
you get to a massive brand like Balenciaga, they actually try their best to like reduce that so you can actually design and focus
yeah,
on the design and the clothing, like the aesthetic vision of a brand, rather than doing all the small like menial tasks. So they have people to do all that stuff. That's why I said that different brands have different corporate structure, and like
yeah.
the creative directors have different responsibilities.
I guess people here are also like very into fashion. So why don't you just like even ask your friend, or maybe you've even had a conversation with your friend where they say, I love designing, but I hate the social media aspect of it. I don't want
Hmm.
to run my social media. I need someone to run my social media. Or I need an intern to do this for me so that I can do that. And it that doesn't stop from when you're new. That's all the way up top, and that is how you build your corporate structure. It's, oh, this needs to get done now, so I need to hire someone for that, so someone does admin for me. And this is why
Yeah,
there's some creative directors out there that have CEOs, so that the CEO handles the business aspect. And that's why there's a CEO at Balenciaga and there's a creative director, because those two jobs don't necessarily mesh. Like you can try, but
and
one thing,
Demna reports to Charbit, from what I know.
yeah. So it's like, and that CEO has someone that they answer to as well, which is why Karen is
Yeah,
feeling
the
the brunt.
executive board.
Like, and the exec board, like the board of everybody has someone to answer to, the board of directors and then the owners. So it's like,
Hmm.
bro, different levels, different, like there's levels to this. And yeah, like having to, like at this point I'm pretty sure Demna would either be working on pre-fall or the full collection right
Yeah,
now, or SS. He didn't have time to do this commercial shoot.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways, that's all I have to say about that,
Yeah.
really.
So okay, to end, because obviously I don't want this to be too long.
Yeah,
A big question that everyone is asking is, do you think that Balenciaga will get through this?
mean, from a business aspect, I think that they can weather the storm.
Hmm.
um on a commercial aspect, they can suffer this because it's not like they let's say offended a culture of people. This is a bipartisan issue that goes across the board. Like
Hmm.
people don't like this child wherever, like at all. No one wants to um no one wants to broach this subject like it is, like it exists, because it's just a no culturally throughout the board for everybody. So it's hard to say commercially how well they will do or how well they will grow in the coming years. Maybe like 5, 10 years down the line, there's a different creative director and there's like a whole rebrand in place and different culture, different identity and cultural identity of Balenciaga. But as it stands, they can't continue down this path, and the homeless chic, and then people will talk about heroin chic, and then even trafficking now. It's like
Hmm.
and if they don't move away from this in a way, it's like hard to um tell where they will go, because then Karen has to deal with, oh, we need a new Gucci creative director and a whole new
And the
Balenciaga team.
Balenciaga. Yeah.
I don't know whether anyone knows, but that's a massive, massive task, and they don't.
Hiring the right person is like one of the hardest things for a company to do. So to hire like those major rot is crazy, like all
Yeah,
at once.
and a lot of the culture
Yeah.
in these companies is hire slow, fire fast.
Hmm.
So it's like they need to take time in hiring certain people. So yeah, like it's hard to tell commercially, because there's a large swath of people that probably aspired to
Yeah.
Balenciaga that no longer aspire to Balenciaga. And once you take that thing away, now no matter what Balenciaga does, it's finished. Like
Hmm.
for those people, I should say, it's finished for those people. And I don't know how many of those people are out there, and people that would understand it in the way both of us and
Hmm.
some people in the audience understand it.
Yeah, I think I think every brand is going to weather the storm, is the crazy thing. I think I haven't seen one fashion brand ever get cancelled for anything. And a lot of fashion brands over the years have done some hugely
Cancelable thing.
problematic things, and none of them have been like cancelled. So I think Balenciaga inevitably, whether people like don't like the fact that they will or people are okay with it, I think they're always going to weather the storm with this one. I think it just comes down to like how, like what happens. Like, are people going to lose jobs?
Yeah.
Are they going to have to do like some corporate restructuring? Of course, they've already done some. They've hired like whole teams and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think they're definitely going to like outlive this controversy,
Oh
because
yeah.
every brand does. Yeah, like someone said, Alexander Wang didn't get cancelled exactly. So, like many designers don't get cancelled. Like people do things and fashion moves on because fashion people are just like that. But yeah,
Okay,
someone said Demna and Balenciaga is still gonna eat,
I
unfortunately.
will say, if this is a one-off, they can get through it. But with companies like this, and like with things that I've seen before, it's death by a thousand cuts. Like they need to be doing things wrong for a
Yeah.
2 year, 3 year period for them to drop drastically.
Hmm.
Someone even mentioned D&G, and yeah, like because D&G done that thing once or even twice, they did two individual things that were in two different time periods. It was like they weathered the storm and now they're back into some sort of
Yeah.
equilibrium.
Micah brought a good point about something he said. He said the point about it being an issue that anyone can care about is a good one. Often racism or lack of diversity, only people who've said race cares, but with kids, everyone and anyone cares. That's a really good point.
Mm,
That's a really good point.
yeah, it's a very
I
bad
think, do
mission.
you reckon that, because obviously, I think that the fact that it was kids obviously won, like in the first campaign, was obviously the big thing, because if it was adults holding those bags, I don't think anyone would have bat an eyelid.
They
But
would
I
know.
think, I think what made it worse was because obviously the coverage, most people still think that those two campaigns are all one. So
Mm,
people are basically conflating the fact that kids are holding a BDSM like looking toy in conjunction with a lawsuit of like child, you know what, plus an artist whose work looks like sexualizing kids, plus a book. So it's like all these things in conjunction, and people thought it
yeah,
was all one campaign. So it makes sense why people think like there's an issue. I just don't know how the hell
the
in the
industry.
second campaign all those things
Wow.
were all in one place at once. I'm just
Mm.
like, how the hell did that happen?
The industry term for this is called a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Like this is a massive, like all of those things happening at the same time. If it was just the guy with the kids, and it's like maybe you can say something, but not really. But then it had the lawsuit and then the book, and then
Yeah.
whew, you know what I'm saying? Like that's wild.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And
It was a lot.
yeah,
It was a lot. But once again, I'm not really here to like do the whole conspiracy theory. I think people did take a political agenda with it and run with it. I think that was the part of it to me that was overblown. What do you think? Do you think like aspects of it was overblown?
someone said, well, the conspiracy theory part, like, well, to be fair, like you know me, I don't really like to go to the extremes. I don't like to go to either extreme, really and truly.
Hmm.
There's the hyper religious extreme of like, oh, this is the
Right. They're
LGBT,
trying to
like all of that
sexualize
stuff.
our kids, and I've
Yeah,
heard that
like,
narrative. Right.
and that's, to me, that's
That's more like from the like right
childish.
wing conservative.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
there's the other side where it's like, oh, you're trying to do this to us and blah blah blah, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you see
From
that
both sides, there is. Yeah.
it's, and like obviously like where generally everyone comes in like in the middle, which is, why would you do this? Like this is just effed. And like politically, like someone said rightly, like Balenciaga's always been political, so it's one of those things. And Demna has
Yeah.
been this smart, like
He
philosophical
is
type
very
creative
political.
director, so it's like
Yeah.
maybe he did mean it. And that is the problem, like right here. It's like especially within the fashion community, because like Demna means things, and like people care
Always.
about him intellectually, so they think, wait, this is an oversight intellectually, and maybe if it wasn't an oversight, that means he meant this.
Mhm.
And that's why I said
But
different
we
cultures.
do have to. I just want to say that that is speculation, though, because obviously
Yeah,
we don't know
of
this to
course.
be
Yeah, yeah,
fact.
yeah,
So, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
obviously,
Like,
we can say that. Obviously, Demna, we all know is very considered in everything he does. We know that he's very
mm,
political. However, we don't know whether this was something that they planned but went wrong, and then they tried to like backtrack,
yeah, we don't know.
or
I want to
like we
say
don't we don't know that
yeah,
for a fact. So I don't want to like support a
no.
narrative where people be like, "Oh, I said," because I didn't say that.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that either.
Yeah,
Just so that, you know what I'm saying, because people could have clipped what I said and just like yum yum yum. No, like, but that is one of the things. It's like because like you said, there was all of these things in conjunction, plus them there's political and blah, blah blah, which is why
yeah.
people, I can see why they would make the leap. Oh, Demner's political, and this is a political thing. Therefore, like I understand how you made that jump,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I do believe, just by what I know about corporate structure, that's a bit too far, because Demna is not in control of
Yeah, it
absolutely.
does. It does say a lot about like, because I do sometimes think that a lot of people in fashion aren't self-aware.
Mm,
Because like even
okay.
like not to mention names, but okay, good examples like Alexandra Schulman, for example. I was watching an Oxford Union interview with her on YouTube, and they asked her, "Oh, why don't you use like black models in your like magazine and stuff?" She was like, "Oh, it doesn't sell." And like even if that's the truth, which is wrong, because obviously there was a recent Vogue runway cover that had all black models, and it's one of their most
Mm,
successful covers. But so it's obviously not true. But even if like it was, you're supposed to be self-aware enough to know that culturally, if you say something like that, there could be repercussions. Like I think in fashion, sometimes a lot of people are like such in like a bubble that when they say things or when they do certain things or when they try to push the boundaries certain ways, they don't have any understanding of how it can be viewed outside, which is why, like our perspective, I quite like it because I'm someone that grew up, like both of us grew up working class, so we don't have this mentality, this bubble of like people that are really rich are in. Then,
mm,
so we can see the perspective from people of different social classes. We can see the perspective of, like, I play basketball, so I'm in a whole different community of people that play basketball. I'm not just like in fashion, that's all I do, which a lot of people
mm.
are. So then they get stuck in this like bubble where they can't think differently outside of that, and it causes so many issues. Like a lot of these controversies, the reason why they happen is like things like that. Of course, I'm not like saying that it's still not their fault, but that's like one of the reasons these
Yeah,
things
it's
happen.
oversight of you not understanding that that is oversight.
Yeah,
Like you just don't have the right cultural awareness in the thing. Hopefully, you can change it after it's been shown to you how this thing can look. But some people aren't just made with that. Like
right,
I
right,
don't think either of our stories are like very what's it called, normal in fashion. So it's
right,
like it's very outside the norm to be where we're from, and then also that gives us a different perspective so we can see certain things in a certain way. But obviously, like that's not for everybody, and in general
right.
it's not even for people that are from where we're from. Like like I know some people from where I'm from would say something about, oh, they're trying to reprogram us and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
So it's like, what I'm saying, like, and I, obviously I've traveled, I've done the uni thing, I'm also an artist, so it's like one of those things where I've seen people of different social classes, way
yeah,
different cultures than mine, and being able to understand that. So it's like I come from that space where people, I care about what people are and who they are, and I respect those things. But not everybody has that at least experience or care for that experience that they want to understand other people. Yeah, someone said ignorance. Yeah, it can be ignorance, but also it's like you just grew up in a bubble sometimes.
Yeah.
And if someone hasn't burst that bubble, or you haven't explored out of it, whether you
You
care
literally
or
don't
not,
know any different.
you don't know any different.
Bro,
Yeah,
like I didn't understand this till I went to the A level school I went to, the sixth form I went to, because obviously I grew up in London, so I'm used to being like in a multicultural area, and then I went to sixth form in Kent in a place called Sandwich, which already sounds posh as hell, and it was like a lot of white people, right? Which I didn't think was a problem
yeah,
until people started asking me questions like so in Africa, do you guys have internet? And I promise you they weren't trying to be offensive, which makes it even worse. Like, because you can tell when something has malicious intent. Like they weren't trying to be racist. They weren't trying to be malicious. They were genuinely asking me a question if we have internet in Africa.
mm,
They're that like oblivious to just
that's
reality
the word,
to know
oblivion.
that literally everyone in the world they have internet. Like
Yeah,
they're just, and these are intelligent people. These are people who, like, some of them went to Oxford and Cambridge,
yeah,
but they don't know that, like, in Nigeria, there's like people have internet, and like it's
yeah,
actually the developed parts of Nigeria. Like that's how people can be in a bubble, and I started to understand that when I went to that school. So like now in fashion, when I see things like that, I can definitely understand how people can be in bubbles and not even understand like
yeah.
different perspectives at all.
And the weirder part is some of them travel, and some of them travel to less fortunate places as well. So it's like,
Right.
well, the people they travel with are also people that are from their social circle. So it's not even like they're exploring a new culture. It's just they found new scenery to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy with the people that are just like them. And like I said, if you don't have the care to explore other people's social settings
Mm-hmm.
and other people's cultures, then you'll probably just stay oblivious up until you're 25, God forbid 30, 40, and now you're just stuck in your ways. And yeah, like it's hard. It's
Yeah.
well, it's hard for them. It's like, but it's, you can't. I do fault them, especially if they're like massively offensive. But at the same time, it's like I understand their struggle. Is it a struggle? I understand them being oblivious. I know where that
Mm-hmm.
comes from. Let
Yeah,
me
yeah,
say,
definitely, definitely. But anyway, I think we've discussed like
yeah,
the issue at hand in depth, and I think we're just gonna end it here. But thank you everyone that tuned in. Of course, I really appreciate it. Of course, this is like the fashion live show, so we're doing it like every week on Saturdays, 5 p.m. UK time. So definitely tune into the live streams. We talk about fashion news. Of course, today was like the Balenciaga story. Next week it'll be different things. Um, and yeah, the situation is absolutely crazy. I'll be following closely to see what the next steps are, what Balenciaga does next, if there'll be some sort of corporate restructuring.
mm,
And yeah, we'll be back next week.
thank you. Yeah, no, this was like your talk was like tremendous. Like I watched it while I was writing. So yeah, I saw that whole part as well, and yeah, no, it hit very very well. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is a good live still.
All right. See you guys later.
Yeah, peace everyone. Thank you.